Hello everyone, this is Youth Dragon, and welcome back to another episode of Fire Emblem Heroes. We're in a hurry, so here we go again. So as you can see from this week, we did not do well on offense. Not a surprise of course, because Emblem bonus and people pairing her with Yoon just gives us already a pretty hard time. And we just didn't have very many options against a lot of teams we faced. A lot of teams were like, we have to hit and turn on them, and even if we don't die in the initial combat, the following turn, just all of the enemies are going to approach us and absolutely destroy us. So, not really much we could do there in that aspect, but we get a win here. So a lot of matches we just ended up sacking 1 or 2 units, depending on the match. We also ended up completely losing a double match, which sealed our fate, of course. That's just how it works, especially when we're not using a bonus unit. That hurts a ton, and there's nothing we can really do about that. Not the end of the world, though. Our opponent here clearly just going for the heal force. Giga nuke strats. Pretty straightforward, of course, because they have dual peonies to spam out. So it's pretty straightforward. And of course, they can always corner Legendary Lilna, so that's just a free win if I've ever seen one. And so, very straightforward win for them here. All that's left is the ether structures, and they said to go this route, which is kind of weird. They could have broken the ether structure, one ether structure last turn, but they didn't. So here we are. Doesn't really matter. And SP farming much. I am okay with how things went on offense, just that, yeah, we don't have any good options against a lot of units. Happy to see Milla being able to tank some ridiculous shenanigans, though. Oh gosh. I had her tank way too much this season. Of course she died a few times, but it was basically the stall time. And she can do a decent amount of damage, which is nice. Post remix, but yeah, Emblem shutting down our support in some matchups is really a deal breaker. Nothing more we can do when we're just outstatted, basically. Because of course, when they're running double save units, our only option is either hit and run, which was available in some matchups, or end turn. Because that's pretty much all our team can do. And when we're up against a harmonized Catria team, hit and run's typically more viable, but it's the following turns that are the real issue. Then you run into the problem that the save units typically will follow most of the enemy units as well, because of the harmonized Catria teleportation shenanigans. And so we can manipulate to some degree to pick off some units, but we also just need to have all of our units in place ready to be able to kill, and especially when Emblem is around, it complicates our positioning even more, which isn't ideal, but here our opponent uses their Brave Edelgard to tank Legendary Alm, pretty standard, but their Summer Edelgard goes down because of course their Brave Edelgard can actually counter. That was one reason why we used Legendary Alm this week, just to see how his no counterattack shenanigans went, but here we are with the great AoE Legendary Lilna versus Brave Edelgard. No chance that she survives this. Not even close. And, well, Asker here with his 8 HP also can't tank, so that's a rip for them as well. Most of the time, honestly, though, it is the combination of Medius, Yoon, and Embla that wrecks us, because of course we have Yoon spamming debuffs left and right, can do a crud ton of damage. Especially with Harmonized Catra, she can pick up a lot. You can pretty much get a guaranteed 2-shot on basically every unit on our team. The only unit that stands a chance is actually Milla and Air both stand a chance. Milla not is kind of suspicious, but it works. It works sometimes. Trade works. Because her base bulk is pretty darn strong, and as long as we neutralize the penalties on Milla herself, she can actually just stand solo against you sometimes. And then of course, Emblem, because our team is literally a meme. It only works because we spam support left and right, so of course removing that support is kind of a problem. But then to add salt to the wound, then you have Medius, so we can't abuse our most powerful unit. Bolt out, max level bolt out. To just absolutely annihilate most units. It's unfortunate, but what can you do? Your opponent can just comfortably Gale Force the heck out of our team. It's not ongoing. Of course, with a particular new mythic, Nurse or something? I don't know. She's also pretty solid at Gale Forcing, so we just end up having a pretty strong week for Gale Force shenanigans. Not a surprise, most of these matches are quick because, well, they're either just going to end-turn the heck out of our team or nuke the heck out of our team in one turn, so pretty solid merges on units here. But yeah, Medius shutting down any chances of us picking up kills on save units, for example, in one round. Whatnot. It's like, for example, in our last match of the season here, I think we were up against a Hardy Fighter Aegis Prefector. I could be wrong on the Hardy Fighter part. I'm pretty sure it was not Hardy Fighter, now that I think about it. I don't know. Point is, we have no follow-up skill on Nino, so we can still double, and so we can 2-round him. Problem is we can't 1-round him, we just don't have enough damage output for that. Not quite enough, that is, just because of all the HP inflation. That with the damage reduction is way too much. Here our opponent can just go on the dirt train with nuking, and they have the mobility so that they can just absolutely nuke. Only problem is now there's no infrastructures available to them, but kind of whatever, I guess. But boy, Arena Assault this week, there's really not much to say on this season's offense. It's pretty much what happens every time we don't make it to Vault. It's just too difficult matchups to deal with. I don't think there's a theoretical way for us to win Deathless against some of these teams. I wonder if some teams are just a theoretical straight up loss for us. There's just no way for us to even win. I'm sure there's such a thing. But yeah, Arena Assault was absolute brain damage this week. Of course, because there's Earth season, so you have Legendary Male Robin running around, and then you have some particular units like a particular recent Rhea, who's incredibly tanky in Arena Assault, especially when you're running a bunch of budget memes. There's not really much you can do there. But hey, what are you gonna do about it? Here, our opponent going aggressive here, but of course that leaves their dagger vulnerable to getting nuked, and that's about it. And of course you have all your super tanky ranged units like Dual Leg Yarn, plus Legendary Male Robin, plus Dual Aster or something. So just add all the salt to injury, and of course they're running some A slot like distant or close reversal that allows her to counter at all ranges, so here you just have a unit with borderline, at times, 90 plus defense and res, effectively or literally that much, and they can still hit hard. It's great. And also a lot of times they'll just run IOT shield as well, so you can't cheese with archers, because of course the one thing that Dual Leguarn doesn't come with at all is damage reduction. If she had damage reduction on top of her pretty solid bulk, yeah, there's going to be a lot of problems there. If your opponent decides to hit end turn with Legendary Male Ramen Brave Edelgard, seems legit. The main thing they just have to worry about is, do they have enough damage or enough stats to tank? And it was almost yes, but of course the problem was AoE Legendary Lilith setting up that kill for Brandon Line. That's the real thing about this meta, is that it's not enough to just have a crud ton of stats, because your opponent can also have a crud ton of stats, and especially if they're specializing into their offense, your defense can only be so strong. Like, for example, you can have 100 defense and res, maybe like 50 HP, but if a unit comes around with Luna or something, that just cuts it down all the way to 50, and if they have special style 4 or something, or some other way to mean your damage reduction, then you're just a stat stick at that point. And most of the time in this day and age, still, stat sticking is not at the point where you can absolutely wall everything. You still have to be able to threaten kills and still have some alternative form of bulk, whether it be like fixed damage reduction or whatnot. But like in that matchup against Legendary Male Robin, there's also, of course, the issue of staying above your HP threshold to proc your skills, and of course, low base HP to start with. So you can have a ton of stats, but that's why this meta is so heavy on debuffing those stats, because you can have a ton of stats, but if the foe has a ton of stats as well, then it might not matter as much. But if you have a ton of stats, and you also debuff the heck out of those stats, of course it's a no-brainer that you're going to absolutely face tank a ton of units, because you can't do any real damage, any large amounts of damage in this game without having an attack stat. Like, if you have an attack stat of 0 and all your damage output is in specials or whatnot, it's not going to be a great day for you when you're up against, I don't know, scowl effects, like on Duo Duma or Brave Adult Tiki, or of course any dragon that runs attack res scowl now. The most recent Rhea is definitely quite annoying with her scowl, and her damage reduction, and the healing, and you kind of get the point. It's super annoying in Arena Assault for us, so there's not much we can do about it. It's kind of whatever at this point. Our only outs are like Legendary Celica and Harmonized Catchery paired with some Giga Noob. There's not very many options we have on the table to deal with a ton of Arena Assault. But again, at the fundamental core, she is really just a stat stick. So the main way she has to age is from the rest of her effects. Yes, she's technically more than just a stat stick, but a prime example of an old meme meta staple of stat sticking is Fallen Edelgard. She's just a bunch of stats with some effects in her V skill that give her damage reduction. And honestly, the healing and guard is probably, back then, were more important than the damage reduction to some degree. The damage reduction allowed her to survive getting one shot a lot, which was definitely critical. But of course, her main issue back, the main reason she was able to thrive back then was you couldn't proc specials on her. So even if you could, for example, survive the counter and get rid of her 40% damage reduction, you still need to be able to pick up the kill, and it's a lot easier to do with specials, but it's kind of just everything combined together what made her super annoying back then. Now, of course, now that her stats are underwhelming compared to the meta, of course, naturally, she's definitely gotten quite a bit not as meta. People still use her all the time, of course, as you can see here. She still gets the job done against a lot of generic units, but especially with a lot of the rearmed units coming out with all their arcane weapons. Yeah. Her general effects are most of the time not going to help her out too much. Because so many units nowadays get guaranteed follow-up attacks or just straight up no follow-up. And it's not a great look for her when she can only attack once. And in this meta, attacking once is pretty bad if you're trying to pick up the kill. You pretty much need to be able to attack more than once to pick up kills in this day and age against general tankier units. Not much to say for the replays, of course. It's just a derpy defense, nothing too special. I don't even know if we ever want to bring back Harmonized Catcher on defense. We could give it a try, like runner with double save units, even though our save units are hot garbage, and just do something with some nukes, but yeah, I don't think we would just lose to other sets of teams, like Enter, because our kill power would be worse. I mean, we still lose to Enter, of course, but I mean, what are you gonna do about it? Pretty straightforward for Resonant Battles. Arena also straightforward because we have Legendary Element +5, but we only ceiling at 768 because Legendary Element, of course, is not a very strong scoring legendary hero in this day and age, so we really need some merges, but fortunately we have enough to max out 768, which in this day and age is generally enough to stay. Sometimes not, though. It depends on the season. And Arena Assaults, again, we had to do so many runs. Just absolutely insane what you have to do to pick up some kills on some particular units in this meta. And it's really this additional support on top that makes it super cancer. Like the new Rhea with, I guess it's not new technically at this point, but the more recent Rhea combined with Legendary Male Robin is already going beyond our capabilities of picking up any sort of kill against her. At that point, I think Legendary Celica with Harmonized Catcher is pretty much the only way we have of dealing with that, and that is not great. Anyways, we'll be back when the results drop in.